I'm recording.
Don't I gotta sign a waiver for recording me?
No, what you see here is not going to stay here, so it's fine. You don't have to sign anything. Neil, boy, I'm with Neil, good buddy of mine from the program. You were there at the men's stag. Like, I think I had been sober for 3 days.
Yeah, I remember the night I met you, or the first night I met you for sure at the stag.
I remember very clearly you were there because I remember thinking, this guy's been sober for a decade. I know it. You know what I'm talking about? That like early sobriety. You're like, I know this guy's been sober for forever. I know it. He looks so cool, calm, and collected.
Oh man, maybe on the outside.
I don't know. And then like, and actually one of the things I wanted to talk about was something that really struck me with my sobriety actually was you resetting your sobriety date. So tell me your story, just like a brief story, and then tell me about that whole resetting of the sobriety date. I think it's like just like I think it's a good part of your story. And then like the fact that for me, it was like, it didn't even faze you. Which I thought was amazing, or at least maybe you're just so damn cool, calm and collected that like, I didn't know. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe on the outside. So I started drinking and using young as soon as I could. You know, I grew up in a pretty well-to-do household. I got 3 other brothers. I'm one of the middle kids, and for whatever reason, I just I don't know, the idea. Like once I realized what drugs and alcohol did to you, I romanticized it for sure. It was just I always wanted to the point where I had actually gotten in trouble. My parents thought I had started smoking weed, and I got in like big trouble, and I asked them to drug test me, and they wouldn't drug test me, and I had never smoked pot. And I remember thinking, man, I wish I had, because
like, did you have like weed, like paraphernalia, like you had like 420 on your skateboard or something? Or
no. I think it was just I was a kind of a skater kid, and we grew up in a small town, and there was a big 4th of July celebration every year. And we always used to, at that point, I think I'd probably been caught, sneaking beers and smoking cigarettes and stuff. And they had heard through the grapevine that on this 4th of July, we were all running around and we were smoking at one of the kids' houses. And they ran with it. And so kind of all the parents thought that was the deal. We all got in trouble. Some of the parents believed their kids that they didn't do it, because none of us had. We were all together.
There was no weed at the party.
No, it wasn't even like a party. There was a small town. If you, in Ojai, how they do it, there's a big parade, and it ends at this park, and there's bands and there's barbecues, and that park opens up to other houses, and we had everyone's just running around. So it was like midday, and we would just skateboard and ride bikes, and you're kind of off on our own. And they had just heard that we had. I don't know where they heard this. and then I remember trying to get my older brother's buddies to like get me high. And they're like, no way, dude, you're getting in trouble for smoking weed. You're not even smoking yet.
You're like, I don't want to enable you. Like, I'm not the one who has a problem.
Yeah. They're like, no way, man, you're going to get me in trouble. Like you managed to get in trouble already. So, yeah. So, I wanted to. And so when I finally did, it was everything I ever hoped for. And, I was shoulder tapping, transients that lived in the park in the city I grew up in, or the town I grew up in end of 7th grade, 8th grade by myself, drinking by myself. And I'd sit there with my like Walkman, and I'd listen to like Sgt. Pepper's and like Pink Floyd, and I'd drink tall cans in the trees, and just thought it was like the coolest thing ever. I'd draw, I was an artist, and
oh, you were like full Hemingway, like just like you were like, somebody told you, like somebody gave you some stupid like, I write better when I'm drunk Hemingway quote, and then like you're like, that's it, I'm an artist, I got this.
Yeah. And I totally bought in to that.
You've been filled with existential dread your entire life.
Pretty much, yeah, since a young age. And I remember my sponsor told me when I had this time travel moment that was really emotional with him. We had talked about that, and then he said, something to the effect of, you know, when there's those movies or those stories where the kid gets left at the sports practice and all the other kids get picked up and that kid's just there and the parents forgot about him. He said, you're that kid, when you were 13, 12 or 13, you left yourself, and now you got to go back and pick yourself up and say, you're coming with me, because there was a whole confidence issue that came along with it. I kind of got in trouble. I thought I was a bad kid. School was hard. So this confidence, I was not sure of my abilities ever. And so we were talking about all that, and he's like, you got to go pick that kid up. And I remember like having this visualization and thinking about going to pick that kid up. And it was very powerful for me to think, oh my gosh, I did leave that kid. And, you always hear in health class, oh, you're using to escape. People use to escape. And I used to get messed up. I like to get loaded. And that was it. No, I just like to get messed up, and I like to be drunk and high. But I realized, but every waking moment that you do since the first time you could. So what about that does not scream escape? Like, I just don't, like, if I want to wake up, smoke weed immediately, do that the first and last thing that I do every single day, and then drink when I can, which means when I'm not working. So every other time. What else does it mean? Oh, that's your reality. That is just a total reality. Your reality is not reality.
Yeah. Or not being present or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, that just went on and it escalated and it progressed. And you think about, when you hear about the progression of your disease, I mean, it was exactly that. And I can see there are these moments where I, from beer to liquor and, not having to stop drinking because I wouldn't, I would throw up, and just kind of being able to drink as much as I wanted. And then, the big one was when, when my wife and I had our first kid, and my wife doesn't really drink that much. And it had always kind of been an issue sporadically, just because she didn't and I did. And so, me being around loaded all the time and I didn't have a reason to have alcohol in the house once we had a kid. There was just no purpose, because the purpose of alcohol to me was to get drunk. It was never just a beer or, a glass of wine or a cocktail.
I don't think I ever had just like a beer.
Yeah, which is crazy, because you think like when you drink like that, you're like, everybody drinks like this. This is standard.
This is
think like,
everybody flips everybody off while they're driving all of the time. It's just happening Look around you. Everybody's always flipping me off.
Yeah. Well, and you look around, you're like, well, they're not flipping me off, but I'm sure they flipped somebody else off today.
I'm sure. Of course,
yeah. So I did think it was normal, and that everybody hit it like I did. So I actually really went in the closet with my drinking. I totally did. When we had our kids, I would love to say I stopped drinking when I had kids, because it turned my life around, but it absolutely did not. And so I just started
having kids. Do you think that having kids compressed like time and drinking for you? Like you would drink for shorter durations, but like more alcohol, like in a bigger burst?
That's exactly how it was. I got to go to the grocery store. Like I would jump to do errands.
I would go to the grocery store.
Yeah, I would just, oh, you need this, you need that. There are so many stories like that are just ridiculous when you hear about like, oh, the favor I'm doing. I'm such a good guy to go do this right now. Oh, you've been out so much today already. And it's like, well, it's just another chance for me to stop at the liquor store and get another half pint and a couple airplane bottles.
Dude, one time, this is probably a year ago, I stopped at like a grocery store. I stopped at Vaughn's on Marigold, and I saw this guy. I'm just sitting there. Like, I think my wife had like gone in to like buy some groceries, and I'm just sitting there, and I watched this guy kill 6 minis to get enough courage to go in and like go grocery shopping. You know what I mean? And like, I'm like, dude, like 6 minis in like 4 minutes. It was a lot, dude.
That sounds standard.
Well, I mean, I would do like a 32 ounce beer. I say, okay, like this is the reason I never got high, right? So like I never got high because I didn't like the fact that like you flip a switch and like you're normal with this second, and then the next second you're high, right? Yeah. Same sort of idea. So I always drank like a giant 30 ounce IPA and just. At least it's like a 15-minute descent, into wherever it was you were going.
Yeah. So, I mean, it went in the closet. It got real bad. It did compress into those smaller time frames. It was the drive home. I think you and another guy were the first ones that got me to really look at my drinking and driving and like accept how much I did that. I think talking about, the frequency in which, just hearing your share. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never really admitted that to anybody in a room, how much I did that. Because it was shameful, to know that I had compromised lives, doing that.
Early and often. Isn't that that's like one of the craziest parts? Like,
yeah. It was a safe place to drink, right? Stop at the liquor store, and on the way home, I would like crush these things and then like toss them out the window.
I would never admit to littering. Drinking and driving is one thing. Littering, that's immoral.
So like now I have this amends to like the county roads that I drove on, that I need to like go and wear a vest and like
this part of the highway adopted by Neil.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's a lot out there. So, it all came crashing down. I would have this anxiety at the end where I would wake up in the middle of the night. I think I've told you, where I would wake up wondering if I pulled it off, because I didn't black out, but, it was just, I didn't really remember like how I went to bed really. Like I couldn't gauge people, right? I was just existing, and I would remember going to bed, but I wouldn't remember like really if anything was wrong, and so I'd wake up with this anxiety, like wondering if I pulled it off, and I would wake up in the middle of the night with it, and then I would wake up in the morning and I'd have to like read my wife and wonder if, okay, did she know I was drinking yesterday? And I was so sick of that. I realized how much of how hard that was on me, and after I stopped, but one day I had a day off. It was in between Christmas and New Year's of 2017. And I had a day off from my normal job, but I had to work the restaurant job at night. And I just started drinking. I had to like do some yard work. And I was like, at that point, I had been okay. Like I never drank at work. But in the last months, when I had 2 jobs, drinking at the restaurant job or before the restaurant job seemed okay, because people always did that. And I was like, so I never did that because I just didn't like to work drunk. It was like not fun for me. I'm going to have to go do something. I don't want to do that.
Drinking for me was always synonymous with, I can't be held responsible as long as I have a beer in my hand.
Yeah.
So irresponsibility or whatever, that was why I drank. It was like, it's because it's like the reason why guys smoke when you work construction. Because you get smoke breaks.
You get your breaks. Yeah.
If you don't smoke, like if you work construction and you just like stand on the corner of a house and you eat an apple, everyone's gonna be like, dude, what are you doing? But if you have if you smoke for half an hour, no one's gonna ask you what's going on, right? So yeah, true. I mean, I totally agree about the whole drinking at work thing. Like, who wants to no, you need to be productive at work so you can drink. Yeah, that's the point. But
yeah. And at the end that changed. And so I tied one on before I went to work. I drove to work. I was drinking at work. And I remember I always had this threshold of how much I could drink, where I would black out and it would be bad. And I would wake up wondering if I got caught, and I had got caught. And I remember leaving work and getting those last bottles and being like, this is the threshold. This is where it gets bad. And I don't remember the rest of that night. Like, I think that might be the last memory of that night. And I woke up in my house at 10 a.m., which at that point in my life was like, and at this point in my life was like uncharacteristic to sleep into 10 a.m. And I was in my son's bed. No one else was there. I had a bunch of missed calls from my therapist because I had missed a therapy appointment. And I texted my wife where, hey, where are you? Trying to find out through text. Oh, maybe they're just off. And when, I didn't get anything back. So I'm sitting on the front porch, kind of waiting for them, getting some fresh air, and they show back up. And I remember her getting out of the car, and I remember her looking at me and like getting the kids out of their car seats. And I just knew, I was like, I'm fucked. Because I had already gotten so many chances. It was, you're going to leave. Like, I'm not leaving our home. You're going to leave if you keep doing this. And that happened to be on a Thursday. And it was in between Christmas and New Year's. So there were these holidays, and men's stags on Friday. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll just go to AA, tell her I'm going to AA. I don't know if that's going to work, but I just know I got to do something. And I didn't think about anything else aside from like, right now, I just have to do something, right? I didn't think about, I'm never drinking again. I just didn't have any idea. I was totally lost. So I went back, I went to that men's stag meeting, and I was just there, and guys talked to me and they welcomed me, and I didn't drink for 6 or 7 months. And at that point, I should say that I had stopped smoking pot while I was still drinking, and my drinking escalated because my wife's like, you're never going to stop smoking pot. She didn't know I drank because that was all in the closet. So prior to getting sober, I had stopped smoking weed for about a year. But then when I stopped drinking, that lasted about 6-7 months. And then I got the idea that smoking pot's probably okay. I went out and, I was golfing with a buddy, and I decided I'm going to do this, and I did it. And I felt guilty about it. And I remember being like paranoid and being high and knowing what the consequences were.
Is that the first time you'd ever gotten high and been like super bummed out?
Yeah. And it was crazy because I was trying to convince myself, because I was all paranoid and I felt all anxious about it. And I remember, doing the same thing that we always do when we're trying to justify our awful, decisions. I was like, this is what you want, Neil. Just enjoy it. Quit freaking out. Yeah, man, you're good, dude. Just enjoy it. This is what you wanted. And so I did it once, and then I had a golf tournament that I go to with some good buddies, and I was going to tell them that I was sober because these are all longtime friends. And so, before we're golfing, they're passing around the whiskey bottle, and I remember, all right, this is as good a time as any. These are guys I've known since I was a kid. And I told them, I don't drink anymore. I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to you guys that I'm an alcoholic. And one of the guys' dads is an alcoholic, not sober, he just is. And he just is. And he's dealt with that his whole life. His dad gets drunk wherever they go. He had to ask his dad to not get drunk at his wedding. Hey, don't get my dad high at my wedding, which I did anyways, because I was drinking at the time.
You were drinking.
Oh yeah. So it didn't matter. I'm like, what do you mean? It's great to get high and get loaded with your dad. But, so they were like super supportive. They were like, man, good for you. That guy told me, he's like, that's super admirable. You're doing that for your family. And then I pull out this little weed pen that I'd gotten. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna smoke this. And I remember one of the guys who my wife had actually called in the middle of a number of my stupors, because we'd lived together. And she's like, I'm gonna call the ambulance if Neil doesn't talk to me. Because I used to stonewall my wife when she would wake up in the middle of the night and I was drunk. I knew if I spoke, she would know I was drunk. And so I just wouldn't talk to her, and she'd get off this. I'd just sit there in the chair. And so he knew, like, there were times when I'd been asked to leave, like he knew that it was a problem. And so, we're golfing, and I have this weed pen, and he's like, do you think that's okay? Like, a real question. He's like, is that a thing that you can do? And again, I was like, well, if I go back and I'm gonna give this to you guys when I leave, and if I want more, then I'll know it's a problem, and then I'll have to stop, right? It's just a one-time thing. And Of course it wasn't. And so I kind of just started smoking weed again in the closet. Nobody ever knew. I'd go buy one of those vaporizer disposable things. Now weed's an easy thing to do. You don't need to have weed. And I smoked a lot and that was it was a lifestyle thing. And so I got right back into it. And I took a dirty chip on my first birthday. I didn't have a year clean and sober. I had that chip, and I convinced myself for a good while that was okay, and that I was going to be okay with it. I had done a 5th step, and I had been working the steps, and I had cleaned the closet out, but then I decided that I was going to put one more skeleton in there, and that was going to be okay to live with for the rest of my life. And that feeling of, the more I was in meetings and talking about honesty and talking with other people, it just started to chip away at my reasoning on that. The program was really just cracking away that bullshit that I carried around with me, that I think, a lot of alcoholics carry around with them for all kinds of shit they might do that might not be drinking, just shitty behavior, old behaviors that are not okay, that in your mind are not okay. And it was right before, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that it's something you've been kind of hinting at a lot is the idea that, well, I'm going to have just this one little thing. I'm going to have this one thing. This one thing will be my secret, or this one thing will be my little thing. And when I hear you say that, the first thing that I think of is Gollum. Okay, look, you can have my life, you can have sobriety, you can have everything, my family, get all this stuff, get my spirituality, but this little precious this little thing, whatever, this little thing is mine. And it's funny because I wonder if this is kind of how that allegory works. I've never really thought about it too much, but it's the idea that if you hold on to one sin, which just means to miss the mark, but if you hold on to it for forever, for hundreds of years, that one thing is enough to poison you and to distort you and to make you a different person. And I know for so many people, sobriety, and I'm not, maybe not a lot of people know this about me, but you probably do by now, that sobriety for me has nothing to do with not drinking. It's got zero to do with alcohol. For me, it has everything to do with sobriety is about waking up every day and choosing to be present today. Literally that's it. I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to choose to try to be conscious of my behavior, choose to try to be conscious of, what I can pack into the stream of life today. I'm not even going to worry about tomorrow. And I just think that it's kind of one of those, but just I might, tomorrow I might pick my little ring back up again. I also might drink tomorrow, and there's a lot of things I might do tomorrow. But I woke up this morning, I decided, look, not today. And so today I'm just going to do what I can do to do that's what things that I find full of meaning and purpose and stuff like that. But tomorrow I might pick it back up. And I just live my life that way now. And but what you keep saying is every single time what I'm hearing is that every time you hold on to something, or it never really quite works out the way that you hoped it would. So why? Okay, so my question to you is why is it not fun once you give yourself permission to hold on to something you probably ought not to hold on to? Why is it not fun anymore? You are fine.
I think the best way to describe it is actually the way the guy that I first told, who was a friend that was in the program, I told him that I hadn't been honest. I hadn't been rigorously honest in my sobriety, and I wasn't sober. And he, he's kind of like, man, have you told your sponsor? I'm like, no, I haven't told anybody. And he's like, well, he's in a men's group too, up in North County. And he was like, well, I've been to your home group and you've been to mine. And he's like, I have a feeling that what you're supposed to do, in this situation, just based on, he's like, and I know you, he's like, I know our lodges. He's like, I think you know what you got to do. And he's like, and I wouldn't worry about that. He's like, I wouldn't, because he relapsed and his sponsor told him, don't get down on yourself because your sobriety doesn't look like you thought it would. It's an expectation. He's like, don't beat yourself up because your sobriety is different than you expected. And he told me that the way that this program is working is because of how you're feeling right now. You can believe that. If you really didn't care, it would be great and it would be fine that you were not being rigorously honest, and you would be okay with that. But this program works. You can truthfully believe in your own heart that this program is working in you, because not only are you here telling me, but you're telling me because it's eating you up inside, and you know that you're not doing right by your program, your sponsor, yourself, your higher power. You're not carrying out your higher power's will, all of it. And that really struck me. I'm like, holy shit, maybe it is working. Here I am beating myself up saying it's not working. I'm not sober. I'm bluffing. I'm lying. But that wasn't the case. You
weren't an imposter. You weren't a sober imposter.
No, I was just a fucking drunk and a liar.
But we all are. Yeah, but you did enjoy being sober. Like it's like cheating on a diet or something like that. Like if you go for like 6 months on your diet and you really loved it and you really liked it and it was really working, like just because you had a Twix bar doesn't mean it's over. Like you loved it. And I think a lot of times you can't, you just can't look at one failure or one whatever and say like, oh, like that's evidence. My love isn't perfect, therefore I must not love at all.
Yeah. And 6 and 7 were real hard for me for this kind of the same reason, because I didn't feel good when I did 5. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I felt so much relief. I'm like, I just feel like a bigger piece of shit because I just wrote all these awful things down that I've done, and then I told somebody and now I feel worse. And then 6 and 7 is where I'm supposed to give that up, and I'm supposed to be willing to accept to have those shortcomings removed, and I couldn't get it because I had these thoughts. I still wanted to do bad things, and finally I'm telling my sponsor, I'm like, clearly I'm not willing, I'm just not, and I can I'm sure I didn't sound like that, but in my head I sounded like that. Maybe I did sound like that, but he's like, so Neil, you're telling me you don't want to get better? I'm like, no, I want to get better. He's like, do you want to get better? I'm like, yes. He's like, are you willing to get better? Yes. He's like, so what's the problem? He's like, what's the problem? Every day you're going to be able to make a decision. You're going to, whatever. Did you act on it? No. Okay, you had the thoughts. That's fine. People think crazy stuff. Did you act on it? No. And even if you do, you don't have to the next time. You don't have to the next time. Like you said, like you just do today. Just because you had a Twix bar doesn't mean you're done. Doesn't mean, well, now I'm just eating Twix bars for the rest of my life.
Do you want to the rest of their life? Like
yeah. Or So I just, I mean, the willingness was really hard for me to even grasp what that, like I just didn't even want to look at the definition, the Webster's definition of willingness. It was like, I just really wanted to like, no, I'm not willing. Like I was just stubborn, selfish, self-serving. I mean, all that stuff. It was just like all those defects were like getting in the way of me even getting to any type of relief in the steps. I was like, all these defects were just like roadblocks that I was just holding on to. I was holding on to that precious, those bad parts of me that I just knew that were so ingrained in me because I lived that way. I just like, I couldn't give them up.
It's funny because in the book of Psalms, where David cheats on his wife and then murders the lady's husband, and then marries her.
Right on.
And then they have a baby, and the baby dies, and so he feels bad. That's the net bottom line. Anyways, so if you want to read a great psalm about repentance, Psalm 51 is pretty much like the psalm for all things repentance in Scripture. And I think that Psalm 51 has always been this huge thing for me. But one of the best parts about Psalm 51 is where David says, God, grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Like David recognized even in himself that he's not willing half of the time. So he says, hey, God, will you give me a willing spirit? And I think that by asking God to give him a willing spirit, that's the smallest piece of willingness to offer as a sacrifice to get more willingness, right? Because he's willing to let God help him become willing.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting idea, I think, personally. And I heard somebody say a while ago that God is the highest value in the set of values, right? So it's like the thing you value the most. So if I say that love is like my highest value, I might say like, hey, love, grant me the willingness to love. Like I'm already acknowledging that you're the best. I would like to do whatever I would like to be the best. I'd like to embody the best. I would like to, hey, love, I recognize that love is the highest power, the highest thing. I'm willing to try to attain to that. And in doing so, it gives me the strength to be more willing to submit to that value. So I always thought that was, amazing for that you don't have to submit necessarily, but you just have to be willing to submit. And also that like a broken heart and a contrite spirit, these are the sacrifices that God wants. And again, a broken heart and a contrite spirit, that's the sacrifice your higher power wants. If you follow like a program or, 12 steps or whatever, like what does your higher power want from you? Well, to surrender, right? Brokenness, contrite spirit. Contrite in the Greek means ground to dust, right? So, and I think that when you finally present yourself in that way, I think that a lot of things can happen. I know a lot of people that I've kind of encountered my whole entire life. They're like, oh, I really want this. I really want this. But you don't really often hear them say that they're willing to do the work to get whatever it is, right? There's a big difference between wanting something and being willing to fail, right? Willingness to try is willingness to fail. I think willingness to look dumb, maybe. So, and you did that though. I remember when you were like, yeah, like I'm going to reset my sobriety day. And like, I was like, wow. And that made me question like, dude, I've been drinking a lot of coffee. Should I like reset my sobriety? It was huge for me when you did that, because I had to really stop and think about everything that I was doing. And I had to ask myself, am I doing this habitually to escape from my present moment? That's like, am I eating pizza to escape from my present moment? Like there's so many things that like, it was really radical for me. It made me question legitimately everything in my life, that all my behaviors. And it was huge for me.
I remember talking with you that night after that meeting, and that was really hard for me. I talked to my buddy and when I told him, and then I left there and I called your sponsor because he lived close, and he and I didn't really talk, but I had his number. And my sponsor was out of the country, and I was trying to convince myself, oh, I won't tell anybody. I'll wait till my sponsor gets back. He should know first. And then that contrary action was like, no, your sponsor's not going to care. You have no idea what this is going to do if you sit on it. You know, you got to just come clean about this thing. And so I found somebody and I told them. And then, you know, he told me, he's like, you don't got to change your sobriety date. You know, you don't have to do that. I already knew from the first time I smoked, when I finally realized that that was not going to be a thing, that I was going to, you know, eventually I needed to stop. I knew I had to change my sobriety date. That was my decision. I didn't do it because other people in AA were like, this is what you do when this happens. It was like, I knew it. I knew that was coming. And I had this messed up thing in my head where I was going to ride it for as long as my pride got in the way. I had already stopped smoking because I was so guilty for, I think, like 2 or 3 months at that point. Maybe it was like a month. No, it's 2 months. And I had this idea in my head that I was going to like let it ride until my 5-year anniversary. And then I was going to tell everybody, or however long I could do it, because then I could keep some chips, but not all the chips. And the sting wouldn't be so bad because, oh yeah, well, I actually have been sober. And it was like this crazy mind fuck of like, well, I'll just do it this way. And it's like, oh, really? Because Neil's way always worked out the best for Neil, you know? And you know, so I told him, I was like, no, I'm going to do it, you know, and I'm going to do it tonight. That was a Friday. And so I left his house, and I remember just as the time got closer and closer to that stag meeting, I just got more and more anxious. And I was sitting there and they're reading, you know, the introductory stuff at the meeting. And I'm just sitting there. I think I had my chip, you know, because I was going to give it back. I knew I was going to give that thing up, my 1 year. And it was a day before I should have got my 2 year or something like that. And it comes around to, you know, are there any newcomers? And I had only heard that that's the time you're going to do it. So I'd already told myself I was going to do it then. But like seconds before I knew that was coming, so I knew the sequence of things, I started to tell myself that, well, maybe that's not the time. Maybe the time is when it's my turn to share. Maybe I tell them when I share. I don't identify as a newcomer because I'm not technically a newcomer in 30 days.
2 months.
Yeah, I got 2 months, you know, oh, okay. And then I realized right away, I'm like, no, Neil, you fucker. You're trying to weasel out of this shit. You knew that this was the time. You know, and then what's going to happen is you're not going to get to share tonight. So then you're not going to get to do it tonight. You know, and so that there was that.
Yeah, well, if they go left in the sharing circle, then, you know, I just didn't get a chance to share. I mean, am I right?
Yeah. So then it's like, oh, it's okay. So now it's next week. And now I get to, you know, so it was like, and so I remember thinking, no, you're trying to get out of this shit right now. You're trying to get out of this. And so I told everybody. And I remember Matt, Fisherman Matt, was there. And I said it, and then it just moves on, right? Everyone keeps going. And he kind of sits up out of his chair where he sit, you know, over in that corner where we all sit. And he comes over and he just like leans over and he taps me on the shoulder and he's like, thanks, man. And it was kind of like that pound that you and Brian were talking about.
Oh, right.
You know, where it was just, you know, where I was just sitting there and I'm still just like, fuck, you know, like reeling from what I had just done. I was like an injured animal, just like, oh.
Yeah, right.
You know, he reaches over and taps me on the back and he's like, thanks, man. And I was like, holy shit, like maybe it's, you know, not that big of a deal. You know, maybe these guys are cool with it. Maybe they don't think I'm a complete phony. Like maybe it was
just not about perfection.
Yeah. And maybe it was just one Twix bar and I get to move on. And so that was a huge relief. And then the biggest one was telling my wife, because she knew when my sobriety date was. And I didn't know how I was going to manage that. I'm like, fuck, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to, like, am I going to have to tell my wife? My marriage had kind of been on the fritz after I'd gotten sober. Things that, you know, just all that pain of all that destruction and that wake, like, had resurfaced. There were months of time where I didn't know if I was going to keep my marriage. And this is like a year into sobriety where she thinks I'm sober, like 13, 14 months, where my marriage almost fell apart. And we were like a month out of that. And your sponsor knew that because I had told guys about that. And so it was this big thing. It's like, well, fuck, now I have to be dishonest. Like I just threw the skeleton out of the closet on the ground in front of my whole group. But
there it is, getting back up to walk back in.
But it's just like, but it's not out. Yeah, it's not out. And if I get found out, like if she finds out, the trust is shattered again. I've been working, trying to get this trust in my relationship back. And I've never just outed myself, right? I've always been caught. And I was certain that if I got caught, it was just going to be another, it's like, well, you're just a fucking liar still, and I don't trust you for anything. And so I finally, with the help of others, I knew I should tell her. Other people were like, some people were like, don't do it right now, it's too fragile, which I was like, I know, but she's going to know my sobriety date's coming up. I'm going to have to lie. And tell her, oh, I don't care about a chip, blah, blah. Like I was going to have to continue with this lie. The lie was going to get bigger, and I didn't feel good about that. And so, the lie was the plan for about a week. And then after that meeting again, one of the guys was like, that I've been talking to, it was your sponsor. He pulled me aside. He's like, hey, you got to tell her. I'm like, I know, but how? Oh, fuck. And he's like, I don't know, dude, but you got to tell her. You just got to tell her. And so I was like, I'm going to do it tonight, because many times in sobriety at that meeting when people told me to do stuff, I took that suggestion and it worked out. And so I drove home anxious, just like the week before, driving to the meeting anxious. And I was just like, I'm just going to have to tell her. And I did. I told her. And she looks at me, she smiles, and she's like, that's fine. She's like, I thought you were about to tell me something way worse. And I just told her that I had reset my date. I didn't feel good about it. And I wanted to tell her that I had been dishonest, and that wasn't right of me. And I'd been smoking pot in my sobriety, and she needed to know that. And she didn't care. She doesn't resent me for it. She might resent me still for other things, rightfully so, but that's not one of the things on the list. And I remember telling that guy, that first guy that I came out to about, I told him, I was like, dude, I told my wife and she didn't care. And he's like, that's your higher power rewarding you for doing right by the program. And that was another thing. I was just like, holy shit. Like, I have just been rewarded for being rigorously honest, which was never a reward for being rigorously honest in my life. Honesty got me in trouble, so it was like one of the first, these weeks that had gone by when it was just like, I was getting weight taken off my shoulders. So like the fifth step didn't give me relief, but that spot inventory and that, that doing it again, getting something out immediately, admitting I was wrong and doing right by that.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here over just 1 second. So there's this idea that I'm stuck in Colorado, right? So I don't have anything to do half of the time, so I mostly just sit around and read philosophy, like an absurd amount, and like a legitimate absurd amount, and because I do my work on my computer, marketing, stuff like that, right? So there's an idea in Zen that you don't intentionally do actions to create like intentional, like I'm gonna like do this intentionally with myself, and then I'm gonna do it for the reward, right? But it could just be that if you want to grow a tomato, that the best thing you can do is to like treat the tomato like a tomato plant, water it, put it in good dirt, do good things. So it's like for the first time in a while, maybe you like, by talking to your wife and preemptively doing that, it was like intentionally going to Home Depot and buying some fertilizer and putting it on there. And then you got a tomato out of it. It's like, You could argue that your higher power rewarded you, right? But it could just be that you watered the tomato correctly and then you got a tomato. I wouldn't necessarily say that I watered a tomato and God rewarded me with a tomato. Like do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But this is not to discount in any way, shape, or form what you were talking about with feeling that reward sensation from your higher power, right? But something I've been wondering lately is there a way to make it so that it's not like I have this, I do good, God rewards, this kind of like transactional relationship, but more like I behave in a way that I walk around treating everything like everything is what it already is. And I'm just acting in accordance with it, not because I want something from it, but because I'm just treating it the way that it's supposed to be treated. And in return, over time, I just get the gross benefits from the things I'm wandering around watering or tending to, I guess one could say. So in other words, you're not forcing positive outcomes, you're letting growth occur positively.
Yeah.
Is that batshit, or does that make some sense?
No, I think that makes total sense. I mean, you just do what you know is right, and then you get whatever results that yields, right?
It just takes the pressure off from having to force God to give you things.
Yeah.
Because the tomato's going to grow whenever the tomato's going to grow.
Yeah.
But you're in charge, but you do have some responsibility to that tomato plant. It's not zero.
Well, you went to grow the tomato plant. Like that was the idea. Like you're just going to take care of this plant. And you might get 2 tomatoes, you might get 20, you might get none. But the process of growing the tomato plant is what is what you started. You know?
Hopefully, yeah. But if you're sitting there waiting for that to come on, man, you're like kicking the pot, waiting for it to yield a tomato. First of all, it's going to take too long, But if you're watering 150 pots, then eventually one of them will just, there's a tomato right on.
Yeah.
Pretty stoked about that. So anyways, I wanted to throw that out there. I've been thinking about that one for a little bit, but hadn't had a real world scenario to try that out.
I think that aligns perfectly.
So you were really surprised. You were genuinely surprised that your wife didn't.
I was, because I had to accept that I may have been asked to leave right then and there that night. I had to accept that she was going to say,
that's it.
Fuck out. Yeah. I mean, because that was the reality. I mean, I knew that's what was eating at me too. It's like I knew in my heart what I was doing was not right. And I knew what the potential consequences were for being that dishonest and deceitful, especially surrounding my use of a substance. I just knew. I mean, in my mind, it was the same thing as drinking. To me, it was like, I'm using it the same way. It gives me the same effect. I'm guilty about it. I'm lying about it. Like, it didn't matter what it was to me, because so I just had to, I went home, I was driving home, and that's where the source of anxiety came from. I mean, just saying it and laying it out there was not where the anxiety came from. I mean, the response, I just thought, well, this is going to be it. I almost lost my marriage, when I was drinking. I almost lost my marriage when I wasn't drinking. And I almost might lose my marriage after, after we got through that part, all because of my actions. This is the tomato that I am going to get, right?
You've never thought about what you sow, you will also reap?
I did think about that, but probably more in a negative way, right?
Like if I sow a bunch of lies, I might get some bad stuff. But you hadn't reversed it. Like, if I sow honesty, I'm going to get a bunch of really great stuff in my life.
No, and I think I'm glad you brought that up, because as I was saying that, I think I realized how negative I was about myself, and I just always felt that things were, the glass was half empty, like in all areas of my life. And I use this like this hardline way of saying like, yeah, you know, that things were negative and that's how life is, and you just have to deal with it. For some reason, I really believe that, and I don't know where that came from, but I even would tell people before, you know, or, you know, I'd say, you know, I am a glass half empty type of a guy, and they would look at me and like, what does that mean? I'd say anything more than a half glass, I'm satisfied. You know, so you know, it was never half full. It was half empty, because if I got anything more than absolute worst case scenario, then I could convince myself to be satisfied. And so yeah, that, you know, being honest and being good and like feeling, you know, and understanding how that's going to make my life good and that's going to make me feel good. That's not where my mind went. My mind went, you know, if you're negative and you do bad things, you're going to get consequences. And I know I had been negative and I'd been dishonest and I had done, you know, things that I was not proud of. And so certainly the shoe was going to drop at some point. And I still feel that today, you know, when I get into these moods and I get back into a I don't know, a headspace, I guess, if you'd call it that, you know, from my past, and I get away from the program and my higher power and step work, and connection with other people, I can convince myself that I am a bad person, and that sooner or later, it's all going to fall apart. They're all going to find out.
They're all going to find out. I'm an imposter. I know it. Like I know I'm an imposter. You don't have to accuse me of being an imposter, because I already know that I am. Yeah. I know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me how I know, you know.
I've been thinking about this for so long the last few days. I'm stoked you brought that up. Like, have you gotten to the point in your sobriety where you're like, oh, I've been sober for a long time. Like, am I even an alcoholic? Really? Am I really an alcoholic? Have you had that?
I haven't had that thought yet.
It was a weird thought that I had. It was fleeting, and I pretty much beat the crap out of it and sent it running as fast as I could. But yeah, there was this whole thing that I felt like I was an imposter. As an alcoholic, I was impostering. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, you know, and that's just like indicative of somebody who really, you know, I can really like get myself to feel like I don't belong anywhere. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like, if you're an alcoholic and you've heard my story, it's not like I'm not an alcoholic, right? Like, flat out. And if I can't feel comfortable or at home in AA, I don't know where I could feel comfortable at home at. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that's something that I'm always working on, you know, in the program. Mm-hmm. That deeper connection with other people, because what I always found that like just having God or a belief in God or whatever, it was insufficient. Because when I remember there was this guy, Mikey, on Sunday nights. Did you ever meet Mikey?
Blonde-haired Mikey?
Yeah. I've met him. Hardcore atheist, like stated atheist, and he's leading the Sunday night meditation meeting. Love it. I love this idea. Just the concept of it. But one time he was sharing, and like, I swear I heard God speak. And the day I heard God speak to me through an atheist, I thought, man, this is where I belong. Because it doesn't matter what we believe. And at some point, you have to check your dogma at the door. You have to check whether or not you feel like you belong at the door. And you have to just be like, okay, I see you, and I'm going to commit to you as a person right now. And we're going to walk through this together. And sometimes I don't feel like that great. You know, I don't feel like I want to do the deal, you know. Then I see you on Zoom, and I'm like, man, it's so good to see Neil.
It's good to see you. I remember one time, you know, so it's weird, I guess, back to my brain's never gone to trying to convince myself I wasn't an alcoholic. And, you know, I don't know if one day that will happen. It certainly could. And I don't know I mean, all of our bottoms are different and everything. You know, what brought us there obviously was alcoholism, but the path that our alcoholism, you know, drove us down to get to where we are is different for everybody. And you know, it's funny. I get asked. People have asked me that. Was it hard? Do you ever question it? Like in different ways. And at this point, I don't know if it's just because I was so lost when I did come in that like I didn't know what I was doing, and I knew I had known for many years that I was an alcoholic, but I just never had. I guess at that point I had said it in a meeting and then left for like 9 months and kept drinking. But I don't know. I mean, by the time I actually, I guess, committed to sobriety, and I put it in quotes because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no freaking clue. I just knew that I couldn't, that my life was unmanageable, you know, without knowing what the first step and knowing, you know, without being able to recite the first step at that moment.
When you say unmanageable,
it was unmanageable.
When you say unmanageable, what do you mean by unmanageable?
I couldn't rely on myself to make the decision, to make decisions to take care of myself or do what was best for myself or my family. I couldn't. I guess that's it. I could not rely on my decision-making skills because they were so piss poor, and I'd been shown that so many times. You know, I guess when, you know, surrounding drug and alcohol, you know, there wasn't anything that was going to stop me from doing it. No bad thing had happened that was bad enough, surprisingly, you know, that had said, you know, maybe you should stop at any point in my life. But one day that happened. And I don't believe that it was me. Like, I don't believe that something else was there that said enough, right? Something else intervened and convinced me otherwise, because I could convince myself to do the wrong thing easily. I couldn't convince myself to do the right thing. And so I don't know.
Why do you suppose that is? Yeah. No, totally. Like, why do you suppose that it was so hard to convince yourself to do the right thing?
I think it goes back to the negativity and the low self-image.
Like
I had, you know, the confidence, and I didn't really believe in myself. So how could I really trust myself? And I didn't really love myself. And so there was all this, and I still deal with that on a regular basis, where it's a total imposter thing. I mean, every time I get anxious at work, and not even because like I've done something wrong, because, you know, for some reason I haven't done anything wrong, which is crazy. But I think I always have this sinking feeling like the shoe's about to drop. They're about to find out I have no clue what I'm doing here.
Where would you do you feel something in your body?
Yeah,
like
I feel it in
your heart.
I feel it. I feel it right here in the center,
like
in the gut, and
in like your liver, almost like.
Yeah, no.
Oh, hold on. This is gonna be good. So I've been thinking about this lately because I've been like, man, I have the same sneaky suspicion, right? That like I'm gonna open my email and there's gonna be any number of horrible dragons waiting to like, right? And so you can find yourself obsessively checking your email, and then you're like, nothing ever happens. And then one day you check it and it's like, you get a moderately bad email and you're like, yep, there it is. There's a dragon. I knew it. I'm over. Everything's done. And I feel it right in my liver too, right? Like right I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I can't point at it exactly. I can't say my liver's here, but I know it's big and I know it's like behind my stomach, right? And I've been curious, like maybe like when you drink, when I would drink, whatever that crunchy, spicy, awful gut feeling is, when I would drink, it would at least quiet or go away. And so I've been wondering if drinking, like if I've got like stored trauma in my liver, right? You know, you like store trauma in like parts of your body. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I've been curious lately, did I, or have I been storing trauma in my liver? And rather than like trying to process it out, I would just drink it away and numb it. It would be like an anesthetic for some emotional trauma that I was storing in my liver. I don't know. I know it's a little bit weird. I know that's a little woo-woo. But it's really something I've been thinking about. And so in my morning meditations, the last like week, I've been like really thinking about like the first time I had those imposter feelings, right? The first time I had those feelings, or and just trying to see kind of what's there. And I don't know, it hasn't gone away yet, but I've been curious about this, people who have, because not a lot of people say the same sinking feeling, the impending sense of doom, if you will, that you're just talking about. But
well, I can get on board with that, because if you think about like fear and anger and anxiety and how powerful those, or fear and anger and how they would drive anxiety, also mean like how powerful those emotions are. For me personally, I feel those all in this area. I don't feel them like in my heart or in my head. You know, I feel it in my chest and my stomach. And so I can totally get on board with, well, that's the first place that a topical anesthetics like alcohol is going to zap. It's the first place it's going to go before it circulates through my body and gets anywhere else. It's going to hit that, and I'm going to.
At least I won't have to feel like the world's crashing all around me, or I won't give a crap.
Exactly. Well, and I like that I won't give a crap, because I don't mind flying, but I always laugh, and even when I drank, I would laugh, because like, I don't mind flying, but I would get that anxious feeling like, well, now there's nothing I can do. Like, I'm on this plane, and if it crashes, it's gonna crash. And I would be like real anxious. But as soon as those first mini bottles came out, and I would drink, I'm not kidding, a single drink. And you talk about lowered inhibitions. I laughed about it. I could care less after one single drink if this plane crashes. And it went from I have no control and trying to control it and being so anxious about not being able to control it to, well, I can't control it, so I guess it's just going to happen. Like, no big deal. Like, like it immediately with one single drink, that anxiety of a plane falling out of the sky and me losing my life went away.
Yeah, $1.50. $6, I guess. But.
Yes, yeah, whatever it was, well worth it.
That's so wild. Yeah, that's kind of been where I've kind of been at with my sobriety, and you see some characters sometimes, and they're kind of like in that dry drunk kind of space, right? Or they or maybe they like go to meetings, but they always, you hear their loop. You know what I'm talking about? You just hear the same thing. It's over and over and over, and you get the feeling that that they really understood the not perfection part, but they didn't really quite get the progress part. They're like, yeah, I'm never going to be perfect. But you're like, yeah, but you're not progressing either. So, you could try to progress, it'd be nice. Instead, we have to hear this exact same loop every single meeting. Right. And so what I've been really concerned with, okay, getting sober for me is like, that's like the beginning of living, is getting sober. So I got sober. Now I can finally start living, because the amount of horrible, catastrophic, life-altering decisions is cut way down, right? And I'm not like sabotaging myself. And I don't know, like, did you ever do this where like you would intentionally not be as successful or as responsible as you could be because you knew you were just going to get drunk and throw it away anyways? That ever happened to you?
I don't think, no, like intentionally.
Yeah,
no,
so like for me, I totally sabotaged myself for 3 years and like refused to progress in life because I just knew I didn't want to.
What's the point?
I'm going to lose it anyway. Yeah. I'm going to lose it anyway. So I just refused to progress, right? But now I really look at it like sobriety it's finally the starting point that I can actually begin some kind of progression, maybe stop feeling like an imposter or start dealing with that crap that's sitting in my liver, whatever that happens to be, or, moving forward in some kind of way. But getting sober is not the end. It's really the beginning. My opinion.
So, professionally, I never self-sabotaged that way, but personally I did. And I think that's what it was, why be good? Because I'm just bad. I'm just inherently bad. And somebody said the other day, a leopard can't change its spots. And I thought that, what my spots were I was a bad person, and I wasn't going to be able to change that. And no matter how hard I tried to be nice or tried to do the right thing, it wasn't going to matter because I was a bad person at the core.
Why give the wife hope? Why give the kids hope? Why give anybody hope? I'm just a bad person.
Why,
I'm just going to be pretending to be a good person.
Yeah. And I would love to say that I thought about other people, but I didn't. I thought about myself. I was like, why give myself hope? Back to the glass half empty. Like, what? Why give myself hope? I am just, I'm just going to have to deal with this. And it's worse for other people. I mean, comparing myself to other people and how bad their lives was like justification, not that my life wasn't bad, but that other people have it worse and I have nothing to complain about. So instead of validating my feelings that are true to me about not feeling good or having a tough time about whatever it is, I said that pales in comparison to the people who have it way worse. And so quit complaining. My voice would say, you have nothing to complain about. Suck it up.
Right.
And a certain part of that I think is important to be able to suck it up. But the way that I used it and the way that I saw it was not in a humble way, was not in a productive way. And so I prevented myself from progressing towards being better, because what's the point? Not professionally, personally. What's the point of actually being honest? Why? It's just going to bring more hurt, and I got plenty of that. So I'll just keep doing it the way I do it. That hurts fine. I don't need, I
don't need to throw like hope and failure. I can do without hope, because I can't deal with failure on top of failure is different than failure on top of hope. It's like soul crushing. Okay. So wrapping up, your best piece of advice, anybody in their first 30 days.
Geez.
Like, what do you wish you'd done in your first 30 days?
I wish I'd gotten a sponsor in my first 30 days. I didn't get a sponsor for a few months. I guess that's what I wish I had done in my first 30 days. And best piece of advice is keep an open mind and take suggestions. Listen to the advice you're given. Be willing to do that, because had I not, there are multiple things that happened in the first 30 and 60 and 90 days of my sobriety that had I not been put in the right place with the right old timer at the right time, had that right conversation, they gave me advice, had I not taken it, I'm certain I wouldn't be here. How much does it take to, how many little, turns in the maze you got to make to get to where you are right now? And I can name 2 or 3 that happened in the first 60 days that changed my life. So, and that probably takes you getting out of your shell and talking to some people. And then just taking the suggestions.
Right. And don't be, and I would say, don't be embarrassed for your story, because your story is your story. Like, everybody's story is so different. I haven't met anybody yet who has a rock bottom that sounds similar to mine. And I don't know any, like, and everybody has a different rock bottom, and it's like, your story is your story, and how it is that you walk through the doors, or how it is that you get to the point where you're asking for a sponsor. That's your deal. And no one is going to make fun of you. No one's ever going to say anything like, oh, your story's not good enough, or your story's too bad, or you're too weird. You
weren't drunk enough.
You weren't bad enough. Yeah, you were only belligerent for 5 years instead of 20. There's no.
And listening to the similarities and not the differences, right?
Oh, right.
I think that was something that I had probably heard a million times before I actually really heard it for real, and it stuck with me, because sometimes you go somewhere and you look at somebody, and you go to a meeting and you look at someone and they're leading, and you think, I'm not getting anything from this. I mean, it's so easy to cast judgment. That's just what we do all day long. I mean, whether we're in an AA meeting or just out in the real world. I mean, body language and verbal communication, you're just forming opinions of people. And so when you walk in and you form this opinion, you really have to remind yourself, listen, we're all here for the same reason. There's, just look for the similarities, not the differences. And right. every time I do that, I'm just shocked, right? How do I draw a comparison to this person's story? Well, it's because I kept an open mind. I was willing to hear it.
Yeah, and I think looking for things like, like, you're not looking for like, oh my goodness, they drove a Toyota and I drive a Toyota. That's crazy. Like, that's not what we're talking. What we're talking about is like, oh, they drank away their shame too. Gosh, I can relate to that. Oh, they drank away their pain. Oh, I can get that. Oh, like, that's what you're looking for, right? Is that what you're talking about by look for the similarities? Like,
yeah. There was this gal that just recently happened. There was this gal that's sharing. We have absolutely zero in common. From personal, cultural, every background, and all the way down to the substance. Like, her substance of choice was not alcohol, but she was an alcoholic as well. But what I gathered from her is she said that people said, you're smarter than that. You can do better than that. And I totally resonated with that, because that's what I always heard too. And I think that drove me further down the way you aren't, because when I talked to her, I said, that certainly didn't help me. Did that help you when mentors and people that were trying to help you said, you're smarter than that, Neil. You can do better than that, Neil. It was just an easier way for me to say, no, I can't. Like, that didn't help. And that was a real, from seeing her up there to thinking, no way, I'm not gonna have anything in common with this woman, to at the end thinking that's probably more than I've got out of any meeting in months, because of that one little gem.
Right. Yeah, being told you're smarter than that. I never got told that, but I could see where that would just be. No, I definitely got told. I got told you're better than this. Maybe not you're smarter, or like, you're a smart guy. Do you think this is a good idea to be getting blasted at noon? No, like, you know what I mean? But that doesn't stop the voice in my head from saying you deserve this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Good idea? Good idea? No. Is it the worst idea? No.
I would get really mad at him, and I'm like, what, do you think it's a good idea for you to be having a Coke and a Big Mac? Like,
yeah.
Like that's where I'd start judging them right back at their face. And so it's kind of like, this is going nowhere. And why am I paying this guy $150 an hour to have this particular conversation? Like, this is ridiculous. It's like, so then he was like, here's a guy's phone number, just give him and then that's how my story started. So, wow. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you for jumping back on. I have no idea how we're going to cut this thing, move it around.
I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're smart, Drew.
I'm smarter than that. Yeah, right.
You're smarter than that.
Oh my goodness. Awesome. All right, dude. Well,
good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, you too. Hold on one second.